Welcome to the Florence Foodies podcast, a place for the community to gather and share the stories, voices, and experiences that make Florence feel like home. To support this podcast and the Florence Foodies platform as a whole, click the Support This Podcast link found in the description.
This should be a good one. Maury last week stirred up all the excitement with barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. Either way, there's a lot of barbecue excitement in town right now.
So love it.
Better to have on than you to discuss some barbecue. So, Elliott Moss, your namesake on the restaurant, and a lot of people like myself. We were talking about this off camera, off the record just a moment ago. But a lot of people might not know this. I didn't, and we'll get into that later, that you're from the area. So you are a two-time James Beard Best Chef in the Southeast nominee. That's a mouthful. But you're from Florence, and you're here in Florence. So just to kind of open this up for those that may not know, why don't you share a little bit about your background, where you're from and where you went to school, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I grew up on Pamplico Highway. My family, my mom and dad, still live out there just past Commander Nursing Home. It's family land. It's been generations in my family. Used to be farmland and houses got built up on it. My mom and dad got that piece of property when they got married and through the family and built a house on it. It's still there. The only house I lived in Florence. Went to Greenwood, South Side, South Florence, and mentioned to you I took an astronomy class at West Florence my senior year when they still had the planetarium there. And then I left town right when I moved to Charleston, Johns Island for a little while. I was contemplating going to Trident Tech, and then I changed my mind last minute and moved back here and decided to move to Columbia with a high school friend who had gone to Francis Marion and then transferred to USC, and was like, I need a roommate. I was like, all right, let's do it. But yeah, I worked my first like paying job was at Snappy Car Wash.
Oh yeah, I remember Snappy.
Yeah, got my first one of my pay stubs there. They would make us clock out if there wasn't cars to vacuum. So I've got like a real small paycheck that I just like have as a keepsake. And then, let's see, I worked with my dad, Moss Welding on Darlington Street. That was my like summer and holiday job instead of daycare. My dad brought me to work before I could get a job. Picking up pecans on my yard on Pamplico Highway, selling to Young's Pecans, where Seminar is now. That was my first like summer hustle. My dad saying, here's $5. Thanks for them pecans you picked up.
Yeah.
And that was some good memories. My first like restaurant job was Chick-fil-A. Got a job at the mall when it was still beside Victoria's Secrets. That was my first restaurant job. And I got promoted to a manager pretty quick and worked there for a long time. And then Mr. Pate, who had that Chick-fil-A, also had the one outside. The double drive-through.
Yeah.
I worked there. A lot of folks don't know that there was also a Chick-fil-A in Florence Darlington Tech down around the back. And
I think I do remember that.
We made all the sandwiches there for Wilson, South Side, or South Florence and West Florence. The Chick-fil-A days, we were just making sandwiches, putting them in coolers. Also worked at the Chick-fil-A on Irby Street for a little while. That was like, they didn't want us to switch and go work for a different operator for a while, and then they were like, all right, it's fine. So we did a little bit of switching around. And my first non-Chick-fil-A job was at Stefano's. I was waiting tables there, working at Chick-fil-A at night, Stefano's during the day, and there was a rollerblade shop here called Blades above a hair salon on Second Loop. Same folks that own Salty's. They opened a rollerblade shop when the PD Pride was still in town. Hockey craze was big. But that's kind of my work history up until I left here in 2000 to move to Columbia, and then just moved back May of last year. So almost a year I've been here. and gone for 25 years, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so let's back up a minute because that's
Sure.
like all of that. So Florence, very Florence story. So just some connections because I'm a Florence native Florence guy also, and a lot of people that have watched this are too, grew up here. Things picking up on you telling your story. The pecans, it's like I have so many memories of picking up cracking pecans with my grandma out in her yard, actually right there behind Rogers. And then I started laughing because you mentioned snappy car wash. This is just a side story. This is funny. You got those certain moments where you laughed hysterically. Like we're not blessed with but so many of those in life, you know, where you just, I mean, like gut wrenching, tear flowing, painful laughing. And we were sitting outside of Snappy. I don't even remember why we were there. Maybe we were waiting on the car to be washed. I don't remember.
Subway used to be there too.
We might have been at Subway. So it was a buddy of mine. We're sitting out there on the little bench that was right outside. And, you know, the cars would come in through this way and then come out through the line, and they would come out and finish the detail right there in the parking lot.
Mhm.
And the guy that was pulling the car up after it came through the wash, maybe it was the water, I'm guessing, mechanical, I don't know. But whatever the case was, the brakes went out in this lady's car, this little old lady's car. And this young guy's in it. And I'm sitting there on the bench and my buddy's sitting beside me. And when I see him drive by, I can see the panic all over his face. And he's like jerking and like trying to stop the car. And I hit my buddy. I nudge him. I'm like, hey man, something's going on right here. And I just have this distinct memory of that look of sheer panic on his face. And we feel bad for laughing, but all of you would have laughed at the situation too, once you knew everybody was okay. And clearly nobody was hurt. But the cart with all the soap and the rags and the chemicals and everything, the car just rolled, I mean, like 3 miles an hour. It wasn't moving quick, but it rolled and slammed into it, and chemicals blew up everywhere. And nobody was hurt. And the lady's car really was actually fine. But that memory stuck in. That's my memory of snappy car washes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So now to kind of get back to where we were, I mean, what would you say the path, you know, obviously you were working in the restaurants and doing all the stuff, you know, Chick-fil-A and the Stefanos, but what point or what interests, I mean, was it something from childhood, something y'all would do at home? What really makes you or made you would drive you to want to make a career and just a lifestyle out of food?
Yeah, I mean, family connections. My grandma, both of my grandmas were great cooks. My mom is a great cook. You know, my grandfathers were barbecue guys on the side, chicken bog on the weekends, catfish stew, and all those things are childhood memories of mine. I think during my school, I think I would tell myself like, oh, I want to be an artist when I grow up. And that was like my you know, if somebody would ask me when I was, you know, 11, what you want to be? I was like, I don't know, maybe an artist. And as I got older, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. You know, pretty hard to make a living off of just being an artist. But I took art elementary through 12th grade every year. That was kind of my passion, that and rollerblading. And I think the rollerblading I was drawn to that from the individual creativity, you know, how you could skate and put your spin on it and be a little by yourself, you know, not a team sport maybe was part of it. But then I don't know, I started cooking at Chick-fil-A. I didn't really enjoy the food service part of it necessarily, but I did enjoy like the cooking, making people happy, you know. It paid the bills, and then I just started cooking more and more at home. I moved back to Florence for about a year in 2001 to save up some money to move to Philadelphia, and all my friends had pretty much left, and I was still working at Chick-fil-A and didn't really have that friend group because I'd been gone for a while. And
why Philadelphia?
I don't know. I was just kind of ready to get out of the South, I thought, and I had been to Philly a few times, and back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, it was pretty cheap, kind of scary, but I liked the dirty, grimy part of it. And
that's an awesome city.
Florence is, I think back on my travels and my time, and Florence is similar in my mind a little bit to Philly, as in location-wise. You know, Florence, you can go to Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Columbia, Charlotte, Durham. I mean, there's tons of places in any direction that you could.
You got New York, Baltimore, DC.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of day trips. Like, so that was a draw to me. Just like, well, I can live in Philly, and it's not the best city, but New York's right there. DC, Atlantic City, all that stuff's real close. So that was a draw. And it was just super affordable. I felt like it was far enough away where I didn't have to worry about family visits, and I could just go figure out what I want to do in my life. And I did that. And but yeah, the cooking part came, I don't know, I was living in I came back here, and Food Network was very educational in the early 2000s, more so than I think it is now. It was literally just like educational TV. They taught you how to cook a dish, 30 minutes. It's a little more, I would say, like reality TV based now.
Entertainment.
Yeah, but back then it was very educational. I'm a visual learner, and I just watched Food Network the whole time I was here, like all day long. If I didn't work, I was just at home watching Food Network, and then started cooking at my house because I was bored or just needed something to do. And I found that I really enjoyed the cooking part of it, having kind of like an encyclopedia of food and knowledge that you could just pull out of your brain and have a couple ingredients and put them together, and experience will tell you what to do with those ingredients, you know. And then I just went on that path. I'm like, I'm gonna start cooking for a living. And I was ready to transfer out of Chick-fil-A. I knew I was just burnt out. I was there for like 8 years. It was nice for a while, having Sundays off, and I thought I was making pretty good money at the time. And so I'm gonna try this restaurant thing out. And I was living in Columbia, and it was real hard to find a job like outside of Chick-fil-A. Like, it was, nobody was like, oh, you don't have any experience. You know, I heard that so many times, like trying to get into a non-fast food or fast casual restaurant. It was like, nah, you don't have enough experience. And I was like, all right. And then I had some friends that were looking to open a restaurant in Columbia, and heard that I was looking to, you know, do something. And they were like, oh, well, you ever thought about, you know, running the kitchen? I was like, I think I could probably do that. And they asked me, I told them to come to my house, so I cooked them dinner, and they were like, okay. So that was how I got my first like chef job. We opened a place called The Wig, WHIG. It just closed down like a year or two ago. It was there since 2000. I think it opened in 2004, 2005, underneath one of the taller buildings in downtown Columbia, but right across the street from the State House, front steps. And I did that for a while, and that's when I really felt like, okay, this is what I want to do. I could start being creative. And the part of bringing it back to the artistic side is, you know, I feel like art and artists or musicians, anybody that's doing something creative is looking for, you know, gratification for their work, and feeding somebody food that you spent a lot of time, and you can see it in their face if they like it or not. Like, they don't have to even tell you. And that's, you know, the instant gratification of cooking is what the drug that I needed. I need it. So I just came really addicted with cooking food and feeding people. And
no, I can understand that. I grew up around a family of cooks also. So grandmothers on both sides. My mom's a good cook as well. My dad would even cook. And, you know, having that drive. And like you said, just wanting to put something together, like you genuinely want people to enjoy it. It really is. It's you got to have a passion for it. That's what separates the really good cooks from, they say it's got to be cooked with love. That's what they say. And I think that's what that really comes down to. And I know that you've kind of taken on this image, this persona as the pit master. Really, that's what it is. We had Maury on last week and talking about barbecue. We've got this competition coming up Saturday. Matter of fact, I'm planning to try to get out there to the fairgrounds to that. By the time this airs, it will have already happened. But so either way, when it comes to barbecue, there's a lot of diversity. We looked at the map in the state of South Carolina, so vinegar, pepper, mustard, the tomato base, and everything. So what really shapes your philosophy and style when it comes to barbecue? And obviously, you're doing whole hog barbecue. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up here in Florence. Looking back, definitely this is whole hog country. I hear it, you know, being used some down now in Charleston. There's a lot of barbecue going on in Charleston. But growing up, I mean, if asked my like 8-year-old person myself, like, what is barbecue? I would have shown you a picture of a whole hog on a smoker. Yeah. That's what barbecue was to me. We didn't really grow up eating ribs, or definitely didn't have any brisket until I was in my 20s at least. Barbecued chicken would be okay, we're going to have some barbecue, but we don't have time for a whole hog. But we never really cooked Boston butts or any of that. It was just always whole hog. And then that was just kind of I mentioned my dad being a welder. We had barbecue cookers in our backyard and all of my family's backyards. And that's what we did on the holidays. We would cook hogs for Christmas, Thanksgiving.
He probably made some pretty sweet pits.
And I had one up until recently. It's still up in Asheville. I could probably bring down if I could figure out a way to get it here. But it's got my granddad's Bob Moss welding is what it used to be called. But grew up around the pits, and those memories are some of my earliest memories I have of food, or me cooking or hanging out with my family cooking hogs. The women, the wives would be inside making all the sides, and we would bring all that together. And then the men would watch football or go to sleep, and then we'd have barbecue all weekend. Those are my memories. Then I moved to Columbia, and then it was like, oh, this is different. Mustard and a lot of shoulders and hams. And I was into it, I wasn't a snob or anything. I was like, a lot of buffets up there too.
Yeah.
A lot of cheap buffets in the early 2000s, and started eating the mustard and eating the hash that they had up in the Midlands, and having a little bit of money and some free time. I started to like, I'm going to go check this place out today in Batesburg, Leesville, Shealy's, or start doing a little regional traveling and figuring out, oh, wow, this is all different. It's not all the same. It's not all like Cane's or Woody's, So it was nice to just experience different experiences of barbecue. And I kind of just kept all those memories, I think, with me. I really did not like PD's hash growing up, deliver hash. Like, I still don't really like it. I hate to say that on this, but I didn't really grow up liking that, the liver hash. My mom and family members, they like it, and I was like, Moving to Columbia is totally different. The hash there is mustard base. It's more meaty. I don't think there's any liver in it. Yellow is the color, and as you kind of spread out through the Midlands and some of the areas like Orangeburg and Sumter, it starts getting a little tomato based in it. And I've been on several like just barbecue hash tours and trips where I just drive around by myself and buy hash. I've done a few hash tastings in Asheville, actually, at my restaurant up there that I had, and where we would sell little tickets and be like a little pop-up and have a hash tasting where here's 10 different hashes from South Carolina, and here's ours that we do at Buxton. And that was a lot of fun. But I just collected all those memories from my South Carolina travels. While I was eating hash, I'm still eating barbecue. I'm trying it all, but the hash was the reason for the trip. So I tried a lot of South Carolina barbecue in my 20s, and I never went to North Carolina for barbecue. Like, not until I moved to North Carolina in my 30s did I ever try North Carolina barbecue. It was only South Carolina. We didn't really go to North Carolina except maybe Charlotte for shopping. That was it. No beaches or none of that.
So I want to ask you, because actually I don't know the answer to this. What is North Carolina style barbecue? So if we've got the South Carolina map, because same, I can just eat barbecue here.
Sure.
But what are they known for in North Carolina? What do they do?
Well, we had a map on our wall that I had somebody paint me. You were mentioning the South Carolina map. And I had all the states or the cities, the big ones, kind of starred. And, if this is South Carolina and this is North Carolina, you can take a paintbrush really from Eastern North Carolina and paint it down just into this part of South Carolina. And they do whole hog, vinegar, pepper, cooked over wood. And just north of us in North Carolina.
So it's like the same. So like Central North Carolina's mustard base? Is that what you're saying?
No, they call Central North Carolina Western North Carolina barbecue, but it's in the middle of the state. And then Western North Carolina, true Western North Carolina, where Asheville is, there isn't a whole lot of like regional, long-standing barbecue tradition. So when people came to Asheville, they're like, "Where's all the barbecue?
Yeah.
We're in Western North Carolina." Like, but it's actually in the middle part of the state. So that's where my like thought to do barbecue even came from, because I was cooking at a fine dining restaurant. That's why I moved to Asheville to open a place called the Admiral, and we were doing like fancy high-end food in a small unassuming building. And I heard so many tourists ask me where to eat barbecue.
Yeah.
Or I heard that asked to the bartender or server, and I'm like, I think I heard it too many hundred times, or my brain's like, you should be doing barbecue here. These people want it, and there's none. But yeah, that's kind of been my path. Whole hog being what I really know, and the hash being interesting, and Florence's barbecue is a little different as far as the sides. As you branch out into the other parts of the country, most people don't really care about the sides. Even in Texas, most of the places don't really have a big sides menu, or potato salad, baked beans, maybe some pickles. In Florence, it's a lot of buffets here, but that's a lot of vegetables, and just variety of things to eat with your barbecue is something that always kind of stuck with me too. I grew up, I mentioned my grandparents living in Parkwood. Canes,
same.
Friday night. That was what we ate every Friday night, I think.
We still eat Canes out at my mom's.
And my parents, maybe it was I don't want to like when my parents, like my mom tried to take us to Woody's if my grandparents went with us. So it was like that high school rivalry, Canes or Woody's, which one?
It was Canes and Rogers for me, because I had on my dad's side of the family. Like I said, my grandma was right there. Still eat Rogers too.
Right.
So I mean, there's this similarity with the style of barbecue in Florence, but it's all different too. I mean, if you go to Woodstone, Canes, Rogers, Elliott's, you really get 4 different barbecues, and I'll eat all of them. We had barbecue last night here, actually, and we had they made a vinegar base, they made a mustard base, and then they made a tomato base. I was like, give me all 3 of them. So it's not a problem. We can't get enough, but so it's the opposite of what was going on in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got plenty, and we're here for it. So
and I had those memories of barbecue, and I was living in Asheville, and it's like, I think I'm gonna try and open a barbecue restaurant, and my brain wouldn't let me do anything except whole hog. It's like, I'm gonna basically we opened a PD style barbecue restaurant in the mountains of North Carolina, and I felt confident doing that because there wasn't really a style in Western North Carolina where this is what I wouldn't move to the middle part of North Carolina and try to compete with their style of barbecue. I wasn't going to do that, or move to Eastern North Carolina and try and do like mustard barbecue. Like it wouldn't go well. But the tourist people looking for barbecue, I felt confident that we could make something happen in North Carolina with some whole hog barbecue, and that's what we did. And over the years there, I was there for about 8 years. Got introduced to Texas style barbecue, got the opportunity to visit Texas, lots of times, cooked with a lot of Texas guys that are known for brisket. And I learned from them how to cook Texas barbecue. And I've got all of that knowledge. And we did do some of that towards the end at Buxton, but I'm holding on to that for a little while here. We will probably do brisket at some point in the future, but we're just going to focus on the whole hog right now.
So y'all did go to Asheville, or you did, and make an impact. And so I mentioned at the beginning, just setting this up and introducing you, that you have these 2 James Beard Award nominations. And so the category was Best Chef in the Southeast, right? And just for those that don't know, and I'm probably oversimplifying this a lot, but a James Beard Award is kind of looked at as like the Oscars of the culinary world. So it's actually really pretty big deal. I would say, and a lot of people would say. So I'm curious, though, how that came about. I mean, how does that, who says something to who? Is just, do people, are they secret shoppers that are just traveling the country and walking in? How does that work? And how did you find out, certainly the first time that you had been nominated?
You know, it's an interesting story. The first one happened, I think it was 2013, so almost 10 years ago, and then the next one was 2016. Um, to my knowledge, I think it's kind of like anyone can nominate anyone for a James Beard Award, and I think how they do it is like they just tally, you know, okay, this guy had 20, this lady had 30, she's gonna make the list, he's not. I think that's how some of it works, and then there's kind of like secret shoppers that are in with James Beard Foundation somehow, whether it being a restaurateur or a food writer or photographer. They have their group of folks that secretly go out and dine at those restaurants that have been nominated. And then that's kind of how the finals have been decided. And then I think once that there's a final list, I don't know how they pick the one. I'm sure there's some politics involved with all of it, but it's a process that isn't very shared, you know, too publicly. But from what I've heard over the years, that's basically what I've gotten out of it. I could be wrong on some of the parts, but as I said, they don't really give you like this is how it happens. If there is, there might be something out there, but I haven't seen it. But that's my little bit of knowledge of it. I know the Lee brothers actually came and ate at the Admiral early on when we were kind of making some noise. When I moved to Asheville, there was a handful of restaurants there, and I didn't move there with any kind of James Beard nomination dreams or even thoughts. I just moved there to get a little closer to home, and I thought Asheville was pretty cool. Definitely different. Had a different vibe. It was cheap back then, real cheap. In 2000, when did I move there? 7. Very affordable, you know, close to Atlanta. There wasn't quite as much day trips, but waterfalls and rivers, the clean water, no alligators.
Yeah.
It was nice. The weather is a little weird, but if you like cold weather, that's the place to go in the South. But yeah, I was working at the Admiral, and we were making some noise, and I forget exactly who told me, but I had been at the Admiral for 6 years and was working out a 3-month notice to go leave and work on Open in Buxton. That was the barbecue project that came after the Admiral, and I think it was 2 weeks before my last day, I got a notification that I got a James Beard nomination, and it was like, oh wow. And it wasn't bad, but there was definitely there was a little bit of hard feelings that I was leaving to do something else without, you know, maybe one of the other partners. And I don't think the Admiral or myself really got what we should have got out of that nomination, because neither one of us really were like, hey, check it out. It was just kind of like, oh, this happened, you know. And then I left. I didn't even get my plaque that says I got the nomination, because I think they probably sent it to the Admiral after I had already left and never made it to me. But yeah, that was very interesting and kind of weird all at the same time, because it took me a few years to get Buxton open. So I'd gotten this nomination, and then it was just kind of like I couldn't really do anything with it, you know. I couldn't show what I could do because I didn't have a restaurant yet to like show what I was doing. And then a couple years later, Buxton had opened, and we were making some noise up there with what we were doing at Buxton, and I got nominated. I was, to my knowledge, the first barbecue guy to be nominated for a James Beard Award. Wow. Since then, there's been some other barbecue guys nominated. Rodney's won.
Yeah.
Texas, they started handing those out a lot in the Texas barbecue scene recently. To my knowledge, I'm the only one that's got nominated as a chef and as a barbecue guy. So got my nomination first as a more traditional, people would think of as a chef, and then my second one being I guess, a pit master.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And the one at Buxton was really, I didn't think that I would ever get one anyway. And then it kind of made a little sense at the Admiral, just from what they had done with the James Beard Awards in the past, like being a chef from the South, there's a chance. Never given one to a barbecue guy. That wasn't even on my brain. And I had a friend call me in Nashville and like, congratulations, man. I was like, for what? He's like, you got nominated for a James Beard. I was like, what? So the barbecue one definitely like shook me up a little bit. And I was like, whoa.
Well, it makes
I didn't
sense.
know that was possible.
It makes sense though, going back to our conversation just a few minutes ago, that I mean, barbecue's so prominent in the South. Like, it's almost kind of like, how do you not acknowledge that?
Sure.
It may be localized to where we're at. Right. That's a huge part of our culinary traditions. Well,
and they didn't recognize it for a long time, and it's great to see them, finally doing it. As somebody who's been a chef and been a barbecue pit master, I can tell you that the barbecue pit master job is way harder than just being a chef, definitely more work. But yeah, I'm happy to see that we're getting some recognition out there for what we do.
And so it wasn't only that, if that wasn't enough, but and this is where kind of leading into where our paths would kind of cross. But you also got some recognition from a big time personality in the food world, literally globally, which is Mark Wiens. And so Mark's YouTube channel, I actually checked it this morning to have an accurate number because it's growing so quickly now. But he's over 11 million subscribers on the YouTube channel. And it's like 11.1, I think is what I saw this morning. So whatever that exact number is. And he comes to Buxton Hall. So, and I'll save this for, because I want to get into, I'm going to share a story on the back end of this, but I'll save it for that. But for my own reasons, which will make sense here in a few minutes, I would like for you to share, what was that experience like? Like, how do you get the call? How do you find out Mark's coming? He wants to come visit Buxton Hall. And then what was it like working with him? How did all that unfold? And what kind of was the result of some of that too?
To be honest, I had no idea who he was when I heard about him. I don't do a lot of food related leisurely activity, I guess. When I'm not at work, I'm not watching food stuff. I used to do that a lot. But when I'm at work, food is everything. When I'm out at work, I'm trying to like do something different. My brain's just like, no more chicken, no more beef. So I don't watch a lot of food stuff, podcast on YouTube. So I didn't really know who he was. And then I heard that he was interested in coming to Buxton to film us and our cheesesteak, and I forget what else he did. Chicken sandwich, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. We had some folks come through, some influencers and bigger productions, Michael Simon, Andrew Zimmern. There's been a few people that came through. So it wasn't like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Who's this? It was just like, okay, some guy wants to check us out. I don't know who he is, whatever. The day of, they're like, no, this guy has like millions of people. And I was like, what? I'm like, today's the day he's coming. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to make him some food. And, it was after COVID, I believe, and it was still just a little weird. The restaurant world was weird, very stressful. Just day-to-day running of it was just stressful. So I think that day I was like, hey, Joel Easton, if you're listening to this, I was like, I mentioned it to you a little earlier, but you're going to make this guy a cheesesteak today. They're going to film you. You make hundreds of them. It's fine. Just, act like he's not there. That was the plan.
Easier said than done.
And, he shows up, but it's just him and his family. And there's a video camera. I was expecting like this big crew, like of cameras, and because we'd seen that there before, when Food Network shows up, they've got bodyguards for their people, and it's a big production. And this guy's just got a little camera, and I'm like, okay, well, that's amazing. You have that many people interested in what you're doing, and you're doing this, what it looks like, by yourself. And then I'm like, Joel, you're ready to cook this cheesesteak? And he's like, I can't do it, man. He totally just froze and just like couldn't do it. And I was like, what do you mean? I can't do it. I'm like, All right, man. Well, you don't have to. I can cook it for you. So I did the cheesesteak. I just thought that was a funny story, and hopefully Joel will watch this one day and get a laugh at that too. But I made him cheesesteak, got a chicken sandwich, and his family sat down. It was him and his wife, and I think he had a couple children. Maybe he had a father figure, either his or his wife's. I think I want to say one of their like parents were with them also. But they were just traveling and had dinner, had lunch, and filming while they eat. And it was just him and a camera. And I was talking to him about it, and it's just him basically. He does it all on his own. I think he might have some editing help, maybe, but I was so impressed that he was just doing that all on his own. And talking to him a little bit and just how he travels. He does take some time off. He was saying but let's go on vacation this month, bring my camera along and, make some content while we're at it. That's
some life, man.
That's basically what it sounded like he does. Is just travel and eats and, has the foresight to plan his trip out and talk to the people that he wants to go eat food with. And, that was basically the experience. But after he was there and then seeing the production of him making it and it coming out and then watching the views, like, wow, this is crazy. And definitely felt some people coming in saying, we saw you on Mark Wiens. Yeah. Pretty wild to hear people, that's how they found out about us. But yeah, that's that story.
One, I find that fascinating because I watch Mark's content, but when I tell the story that I'm about to tell, you'll see just how true that is, really, honestly, how much of an impact something like that can make in the big picture. So this is kind of where you and I would intersect, so to speak. And this is really our first time meeting and sitting down and having any kind of extended conversation, but there is a bit of a story, and Mark is smack in the middle of it, actually. So I'm going to have a little story time.
Sure.
In 2021, I, like millions of other Americans, got COVID. And I remembered, I'll probably never forget this, but I was at work. I was at my 9 to 5 in my office. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon, and like a headache just came on like that. And then my back hurt, and then my body hurt. And I knew it was different, and everybody knew what was going on, especially by that point. I mean, this is into 2021 a little ways. So it was pretty apparent, I would say, to me. So I went into my supervisor's office and I was like, look, I'm not feeling right, and I think I've got it. And I'd made it a long time without contracting it, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what this is, because it was that abnormal. And sure enough, I had COVID, and that would put me down for just over 3 weeks. I won't get into all of it, but people had different symptoms and experiences. But for me, I was down. I mean, I couldn't even like really walk to the bathroom or back. And I didn't go to the hospital, but I was just pretty much in bed, aching, and I had no appetite. So I didn't eat for 3 weeks. And somewhere early on in that 3 weeks, after a few days of not eating, my mind still wanted to eat, but my body just had no appetite. And I'm scrolling through YouTube because I couldn't move. So I'm either reading or just scrolling on the phone or whatever. And I come across this video, and it's this guy, Mark Wiens. I had no idea who he was either at the time. And he was eating street tacos down in Mexico City. And we're big tacos fans. My wife's from Honduras, Central American food cuisine. I like all the stuff. But that's a big part of our diet also. And so I'm watching these tacos down in Mexico City and like, man, those look fantastic. I'm like, I wish I could eat some tacos. I'd go to Jennifer's Taqueria right now if I could, or something like that. That opened the can of worms. Simultaneously, while that was going on, me and her had been planning out our family vacation for that year. And we're kind of like opposites. She, Maria wants to vacation to go get away from civilization. So she wants to go camping and be out with like just the mosquitoes and the snakes and everything. That's what she wants to do. I, much like Mark, I travel for food. So like when you said, doing a hash tour, that's right up my alley. That's something that I would do if time permitted. Like I want to go eat in different places. And so how do we merge those two things together is the tension for our trips. So I had already been planning where could we go? And Asheville was actually on my short list because we could go to the mountains. She would love that. I'll enjoy it too. Don't get me wrong. I like to be out in nature too. But she'll really love that. And then, but what could we do in Asheville that I would like to do as well, and the kids. So I'm scrolling through these, I'm watching Mark Wiens videos, and then this video pops up. And ironically, out of all the things we've talked about, it was actually the chicken sandwich. That's how he titled it. The best chicken sandwich in America, exclamation point twice. And that also is right up my alley, fried chicken sandwich. So I'm like, oh man, like the whole war had just been going on with Popeyes and Chick-fil-A, the whole thing. And that had just happened. And so I'm like, this is an actual dine-in restaurant though. So what is this all about? So I click it. It's in Asheville. I watched the video. So obviously you know the story because you were in it. So you just shared it. So I watched the video. A few weeks later, I'm back at work. The first guest that was on this podcast is Lewis Hill. He is the quality manager over where I was working at the time. I get back to work. We talk about food all the time. That was shop talk for us. So we'd have these long, elongated, elaborate conversations about food all the time in the warehouse. So I get back and I'm like, we're going to Asheville for our vacation. And I've got my food hit list set up because much like a lot of people, even Maury sat in that seat and said it last week, we watch Mark's content to figure out where to go eat. I've gone to multiple places in the country, Buxton Hall, Chai Panee, those are just a couple, but I've gone to multiple places where Mark went first. Like, okay, we're in town, we'll go there. And so I get to the office. I'm telling Lewis, I said, we're going to go to Asheville. And we're going to go to these places. There was a list of places, but Buxton Hall was on the list. I said, I'm going to go check this chicken sandwich out. And this looks like they got some other stuff that would be really good at this place, Buxton Hall. He's like, well, Elliot's from Florence. I was like, no, I didn't know that. He said, yeah, he is. And this is where the story kind of shifts because that right in that moment when he said it, there was actually, believe it or not, a disappointment that hit my soul when he said that. And because I was like, we had talked so much about Florence's food scene in that warehouse. I've lived here for so long. I had 5 years in Columbia. I was in Augusta, Georgia for about a year. I've traveled a lot of different places, but this is home. Our Florence scene has ebbed and flowed. It's waxed and waned, and it's done a lot more waning than waxing, especially over, the last 30 years or so. I really always felt like in conversations me and Lewis would have that there's a lot of potential here, and I'd like to see it more than what its reputation had become. To put it that way, because I know there's a lot of people here that really appreciate good food. When he said that, and mind you, I don't know who you are at that time or anything, but I was just like, man, that's disappointing because here's this talented person. It'd be great for us to keep that kind of talent at home and have it here, or even bring that kind of talent here. So that was just a moment, but it really was like a seed that planted. Fast forward the clock a little bit, we went to Buxton Hall, and just as a side note, that was my first time having Alabama white sauce. So when I was there, I remember what I got. I took the whole crew, had the kids, Maria, everything, and got the brisket cheesesteak that you were mentioning. And then we got barbecue, and then we got a bunch of the different sides. I think we had collard greens and stuff. And then I also got the chicken sandwich because I had to, because that was really what I was there for. At least that was what started it. And it was super good, and I put the Alabama white on it, and it was fantastic.
Well, thank you.
So I come back and tell Lewis all that, and we talk about it, and that was that. Fast forward the clock now another couple of years beyond that, because at that time, I wasn't even in real estate. I had done some things privately, which was kind of my story, and real estate's a whole other story, not for this conversation this time, but actually being a licensed agent professionally, I didn't even know I was going to get a license at that time. That wasn't even on the radar. So fast forward the clock a couple of years. Well, now I have, and that's what I'm doing. And I've left my 9-to-5, my full-time job there to do that full-time, to do this, real estate thing full-time. I'm sitting there at the house and I have a conversation with my wife, and we were talking about the old Percy and Willie's building because I had this long history working there. And so they've got this big wood grill. And to my knowledge, Town Hall is the only other place in town that does wood grill food. So it's just it's a great asset to the city, I think. And unfortunately, for their own reasons, that's not an option anymore. So I was like talking with her, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if somebody like Elliot could take that? It's sad that it's not being used. I'm like, man, I bet he would know what to do with that place. And she was like, reach out to him. And I was like, I don't even know how to reach out to him. She said, just reach out to him. So after a few days passed, so I go on Instagram and I send you a message, and I put my real estate hat on. I send all these statistics, and I'm like, because it's a win-win. I'm like, man, the original seed was food. when I heard that you were from here, and you had already been built up in my mind because I watched Mark's video. So I had some professional background on who you are and what you do and your skill level and stuff like that. Then Lewis tells me you're from Florence. And, like I said, that seed of, man, it'd be great if he was at home, if that was even possible, because what an asset to Florence it would be to have him here. So then now this comes along, and it's like, well, as a side note, that building at the time listed, I don't know where they priced it now, but like $4 million, that's like $100,000 commission. So, hey, that's a win-win. You know what I'm saying? So I reach out to him like, hey, just so you know, this building's open, yada, yada. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it'd be really awesome if, that was something you'd be interested in, let me know. And I sent you all these statistics about what's happening in Florence because I wanted to paint a picture that Florence may not be what you recalled it as. It's changed, and it is changing in terms of our just potential as a city. Everything that's going on downtown, all that stuff. I sent you all that stuff. I didn't even know if you'd even see it because a lot of times we don't see these messages. They get stored in the request file and we don't even look at them. But to my surprise, you did. You responded and you told me quick. You're like, look, I'm not buying a $4 million building. Right. I was like, dude, that's cool. I'd be happy just to get a brisket cheesesteak is actually what I said. I was like, I hear you, man. No problem. And you made a comment, about you would be open to the idea. So I'd worked at Victor's for a while. And so I called Cooper Thomas. He didn't answer. And I left him a message. I don't think he responded. And I went up there. You don't know what I went through to try to get his ear. Because I don't know if he remembered me by name. Once he saw my face, he remembered that I'd worked for him and who I was. Because it had been like a decade, So I went up to the hostess that was there, the young lady that was there, and I gave my card that I had at the time that had my face on. I said, look, give this to Cooper and just tell him I'm not asking, I'm not trying to sell anything, and I'm not looking for a job. I just want to share something with him that I think he may want to hear. It'll take literally like 2 minutes. And that worked. So he called me like an hour later or something like that. And I told him, I said, listen, by some turn of events, I've gotten Elliott Moss's ear. So you may want to, let Tim know. And he did. And then that was, I don't remember the exact timeline, but like days or weeks passed. And then of all times during the second quarter or the first quarter of the Super Bowl last year, not this one. And it's good it wasn't because you mentioned Philadelphia. I'm a big Eagles fan. So if you called this year, I might not have took the call. I might have had to wait until afterwards. But last year was fine. It's 49ers and the Chiefs. And Tim Norwood's calling. And so I take the call and he said, I heard that you've gotten in touch with Elliot. And I said, yes. And he said, well, send me his number. And I don't know what happened after that, but you two guys got connected and the rest is history. But it really, at least my little art in this story, this timeline, went back to Mark Wiens. And then just to circle back to one more thing on that, really Mark and then some other people that I found on YouTube, because you get suggested content once you start watching a certain type of stuff. There's some other people that came up and I started kind of really enjoying their contents where it started. And then once we started doing some of the things that we were doing, it's like, well, I could probably take some of this. We could probably do some things like this. And that's kind of the development personally on some of the stuff that I've been doing. And we have with Florence Foodies and all of that. But
that's awesome.
That was actually sitting there sick, no appetite, unable to eat, laying in the bed and hurting from head to toe, living off ibuprofen and heating pads and ice packs, was really my introduction to everything that's going on in this room right now.
Full circle.
And it had that little role in even you're sitting here and what's going on. So I'm fascinated just sitting here speaking with you. So it told me, it was like, what other phone calls could we make? Like, who else could we call? And I don't know the answer, but that was how that came together. So,
well, it's not lost on me that, I'm glad you told that story. Big, huge hand in bringing me here, and can't thank you enough. And I mean that. And yeah, it was 2 days actually. I got a call from you, talked to you on the phone, and it's like, yeah, let me know if you ever have anybody want to talk some more. And 2 days later, I was talking to Tim Norwood.
Yeah.
So,
it was that quick.
Yeah, it was that quick. To my knowledge, anyway, it seemed like it happened super quick, and here we are a year later, a little more than a year later.
What Tim has done, his contribution to our entire city, and there's some others around him too, but in this case specifically Tim. I mean, Tim cut the ribbon the other day at at Elliott's. What Tim has done cannot be overstated. And when we did the Victor Showcase, I mentioned this a couple times on here. Those that keep up with this content and follow it, yes, I'm mentioning it again. But we titled that video "The Restaurant That Changed the City," and there's a lot of different things that have going on. But Victor's establishment down there in the Hotel Florence in downtown, you probably remember. I mean, you're a Florence guy. I'm from West Florence, so I went to West and everything. And I mean, I grew up. My house was right there off Franklin, so right off Palmetto. So I mean, I was very close to downtown. Downtown, literally, we could walk down there in woods sometimes. We could ride a bike or walk. And I don't know if you would do that or not, but downtown Florence, 20 years ago when I was in high school, vastly different from what it is now. And not to take away, there was a lot of great things going on. There really were actually, my barbershop was down there for years. So there was a lot of culture and a lot of really good things in downtown Florence, but it's nothing like what it is now. And Tim's right at the center of a lot of things that have gone on. And I didn't realize it was that quick on my end, just the timeline. But yeah, 2 days, I mean, he jumped right into action. And so we're very thankful, for a lot of the things that he and some others have been willing to invest the time, the energy, the vision, the emotion, the money to build to our community in our city.
Absolutely.
And this is a big part of it. And so with that said, I really kind of the last thing, unless you had some things to talk about that I wanted to get into, we can't sit down and do this without getting into Elliott's. So March 11th was the official opening. And there's some cool stuff going on out there. I think that we're going to try to get out and get some content and really, really get some visuals to show everything that's happening at Elliott's. Might mention that briefly on the back end of this. But for now, what can you share about just what the vision of Elliott's was to get it up and running? What you had in mind, you and Tim come together, however all that worked out, and then what's really the vision going forward?
Yeah, well, again, you reaching out to Tim calling me, and planting a seed. I had sold my shares to Buxton to my partners in 22, the summer of 22. I was kind of just after COVID and the town, and been there for 17 years, and I was just ready to like do something different. I felt like I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do in Asheville and was just looking to do something else. And at the time, I was actually looking at Sunset Beach and Ocean Isle. My cousin lives there. She is from Florence and was interested in opening a restaurant with me down there. Basically just because she's like, there's nothing here. I'm tired of cooking. Let's do something. And I'm like, I'm a beach guy. Been living in the mountains for 17 years. Really wanted to put my feet in the sand.
I'm a beach guy too. I can
feel you on that. I can smell it from here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a project that we were working on for over a year. Real estate down there is really hard to come by, commercial real estate, and letting people come in and building is tough. And then the few spots that are there are like super expensive or just unavailable. And I was really trying to do that. I was working on another hustle, trying to get something going in Asheville, just in case the beach didn't work out, at this place called Marquee. It's like a big, kind of like Palmetto Peddlers, big open air building, lots of little vendors selling art and antiques. And they had a little corner, and they were trying to sell that to me as a spot to do a restaurant. I was actually going to call it Debbie's Showcase Lounge. That's my mom's name. And
That's my mom's name.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Weird, man.
It is weird. But I was going to do a Christmas theme bar there and do some barbecue outside. And I was about to sign some paperwork on that project. And then this project here in Florence happened, and talked to Tim, and Tim painted a pretty good picture for me and made me an offer that, it's like, this is better than what I got going on here. Having a hard time at the beach trying to make something happen. And I decided to work on this project. And then fast forward a couple months, and that spot in the Marquee got totally washed away by the hurricane.
Wow.
Yeah. So crazy. And a lot of people don't know that I was even working on that spot over there. But yeah, sorry, a little emotional.
No, I understand.
But yeah, I got the opportunity to do this here in Florence, and the conversation with Tim, I knew all about Seminar. You know, I've been gone, but I keep my eye on Florence. I first heard about Seminar opening. I was like, man, Florence has got a brewery. That's crazy. We've got three breweries. You know, living in Asheville, there's lots of breweries, but I never thought Florence would have like a scene of breweries. You know, it's a Bud Light, Budweiser kind of place here. And I knew that growing up. So to hear that we had some breweries in town was awesome to hear. And then I heard that Seminar moved to the current location, you know, Young's Pecans, and I mentioned that I was in that building in the early 80s selling pecans to it. So I knew what it was, and that's a brewery there. And my grandfather had a oil and lubrication business on Lucas Street, just down the road from there. So I grew up on Lucas Street. So I have vivid memories of that building, and just to dream that like I could have a restaurant in there was just like I could see that happening. That's like full circle. Hearing about it being an opportunity, I was like, yeah, let's go check it out. And I came up. Tim asked me to come up and brought my wife, and my family still lives here. And I was like, I can just stay with my family. And he's like, no, I want to put you up in the hotel. So we got a night at the Hotel Florence, and it was really nice, and had some dinner at Victor's, and you know, just laid the groundwork of what we could do there. And I leaving Buxton, I mentioned how hard the barbecue business is, and I was like, I'm interested in doing a barbecue place, but I think I only want to do it on Saturdays, and we can figure out, you know, a menu that's maybe using some of the smoker, but not full on barbecue, because I didn't want to be up 24 hours a day cooking barbecue all day long every day. And that was what my brain was telling me at the time. And we started on this path, and I started kind of secretly working on the project in February of last year. I would come down for a week or two and stay with my parents and just kind of make suggestions on what we could do. We were working on a deal trying to buy a Seminar from the previous owners, and I was just kind of like walking around just while they're still operating, you know, just collecting information, and, you know, just figuring out what we needed and what it would take to make happen. And then we got our really started working on the permitting and the architectural plans summertime of last year. And we were like, oh, this is going to happen like that. And we were talking to ourselves about being open last year, like last summer, like this project will be super easy. You know, we're just cooking barbecue outside, you know, how hard could it be? You know, and
Famous last words.
Asheville is very, it was very challenging to cook barbecue in that city, and being so historic and old, and lots of hoops and hurdles that they all made us jump through. And that was one of the reasons why I was ready to just like move away from Asheville, because how hard it was just to do my job day to day. And I felt like Florence might be a little easier to work with being, you know, a smaller town. Tim having some connections and just knowing everyone, and I could sense a feeling of excitement from some of the city folks. Clint Moore being from the area, I could sense that he was excited about the potential of us doing a barbecue place. So maybe they'll make it easier on us, and they definitely did. Construction just takes a long time. Permitting and getting everyone, 10 different people that are supposed to do a job together, getting everyone to do that all at the same time takes some time.
A little bit about it.
So it took longer than we had originally planned, and we were shooting for like January opening, and we were just like, March has got to be it, whatever it takes. And we just did everything we could to be open by the Food and Wine Festival, because we'd already like a year ago, I'm like, let's have it here. We'll be open by then for sure. And it's like, are we going to be open? I don't know. But we made it happen. And I spent, you know, all summer last year, all winter, you know, cooking food at Seminar. And I was telling some of my friends outside of Florence, and they were like, what? You were doing what? It's like, yeah, man, I've been working my tail off for a whole year, you know. Nobody knew. And I didn't want to like make a big deal about me cooking there, because I didn't want to give anybody expectations and show up disappointed. Like, he's doing barbecue. Let's go check it out. And then the health department show up one day and say, we can't cook barbecue because we don't have the proper materials outside to do it. And that was like worst case scenario, that we start getting going and making a name for ourselves about barbecue and then having to shut it down and build something. So we just decided to build what we needed to build and then start the barbecue. And we all as a group decided that we thought it would be best just to wait until we were ready. And it just took a little bit of time. But over those years or months, I had time to think about it. And, you know, we're putting all this time and money and effort into building a smokehouse. Like, it would be pretty silly not to utilize it full time. So somewhere along that timeline, I decided that, you know, we should just be doing barbecue. And I felt like that's what this area probably wanted or needed, whether they know it or not. And I don't want to see whole-hog, you know, go away from this area.
Dude, literally last night, like I said, we were having barbecue last night. So we're all sitting there talking downstairs. And a buddy of mine's talking to me and has no idea about anything we've talked about in this podcast episode. None of it, which really makes it kind of cool. And he's like, man, have you been to Elliott's? I was like, yeah, I have. I haven't been able to get out quite as much as I really want to get out there and sit down. But I popped in and out, got some to-go stuff. And on opening day, you know, my wife went and she brought me a sandwich back. I was like, yeah, I know about Elliott's. And he said, dude, it was like that barbecue is fantastic. He was awesome. Like, you know, it's like the best that I've had in the area. And so just that, you just smile, man, just that impact. And I've been following the story, obviously, but just watching the progress of the smokehouse being built. And what I hope the whole time, I really hope, and Maria could attest to this, I've told her this a couple of times, is, man, it really looks like that's really blessing him. And then the full circle story, I knew a little bit about your connection to that specific area because we talked a little bit about it, but I was like, man, this is like a great opportunity. And so I hope that that he's really excited about it and enjoying what's going on and that support. Because I mean, that smokehouse is huge. So I don't know if that's normal or not. I'm not a pit master myself. So I mean, I don't know, but it seems like that's a pretty elaborate setup. Like, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty big. And you know, Scott's down in Hemingway. I've been friends with Rodney for a long time and visited there back when Rodney was still there cooking.
I've been down there before too.
And they burnt down the smokehouse. I forget what year it was, but I had been to the original one and remember Rodney's tour to like rebuild. And I was so excited to like see what they were going to build.
Yeah.
Because the original smokehouse was very bare bones. And I remember being someone in the culinary world, like, how did they get away with this? Like, how are they doing this out here? And that was very inspiring too, just to be like, wow, like, this is all you need to have a barbecue place out here in South Carolina. Like, this is amazing. And seeing what they build, and definitely the smokehouse here at Elliott's is inspired by what they did on the rebuild.
Awesome.
The pits. And I saw how many pits they have, and I was like, wow, they're in the middle of nowhere. I need at least this much space to hopefully we have a small amount of business like they do. Us being close to the interstate definitely was a little like, we probably should think about having a bus come in one day. You never know. Build for growth and build to be ready for, we have room to expand if we ever need it. And then my experience of how many hogs we were selling in Buxton, like, yeah, we didn't have enough room in Asheville. That was our problem. So I was like, I can cook 7 hogs at a time. And we aren't cooking that many hogs every day, but you know, people like barbecue around the holidays. So I'm sure come Christmas, Thanksgiving, we'll have 7 hogs on there quite a few times, trying to meet the demands for everybody's barbecue needs, hopefully.
Well, I mentioned that story from last night because that was just that was one isolated conversation that I had. But I mean, Elliott's has only been open for what, like a month now?
Yep.
And that's the kind of impact that's already having. So
that's great. I mean, I did this place because of my memories of, you know, Cane's, Woody's. I mean, this is what people barbecue's in.
It's home, man. And that's why I maybe there's even more to this than I even realized or understood. There always is. So I'm sure that was the case. But even just sitting here having this conversation, dude, like that's the heartbeat of all of this. It's community. And when you talk about, see, now you got me getting emotional and stuff. Like when you talk about barbecue culture, this is our home. You know what I mean? This is in the DNA of us here. This is us. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
And so just super excited. I'm my mind's still blown at the whole trajectory of the thing. And I'm just honored and blessed that we had that little role in it. But man, it's bigger than, and just being frank from my perspective, the way I view it, it's even bigger than you and Elliot's. It's really about the PD as a whole, you know, Florence as a whole. There's so many memories and history and culture here. And there's so many people. We mentioned Tim. There's others that have really poured their life into breathing life into this area. Community cities can grow and develop, or they can die. I mean, it happens. And Florence is on such a great trajectory and path. And for those of us that call it home, it's very exciting. And I think for me, obviously, food culture is really at the center for me. Maybe I'm just a big back guy, but food culture is really at the center of community. It's just right there at the heartbeat. And then there's other things that roll out from there, but that's really where it all starts to me. So super excited, man.
Well, I'm blessed to be here, and I didn't know what to expect. You know, I've had lots of time to think about day one. What's it going to be like? People are going to be like, what is this? This isn't barbecue, or who's this guy? I think he is coming back here. I had no idea. I had all kinds of scenarios in my head, and we've so far been welcomed pretty warmly. I felt like people are excited what we're doing, and that's just fuel for my fire, you know.
Yeah.
Keep it going.
All right, so you ready to do a segment that we call the Florence Foodies' Favorite Florence Food, presented by Drayton Realty Group. So the question is, what is Elliott Moss's favorite Florence food item when you go out to eat, but it can't be from your own restaurant?
Gotcha. That's an easy one. And it's been my favorite since 96 probably, but Stefano's cheesesteak, that's number one.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah. Had many of them. When I was a server there in the 90s, they let me cook a few of them. That's really the first cheesesteak I ever had. To my knowledge, Stefano's family, Ozzy and Steve, they're from Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So having a cheesesteak as a teenager, never having one, never really heard of one, I was like, man, this is awesome. Fast forward a few years, I moved to Philadelphia. I'm stoked to go to cheesesteak land because I remember Stefano's cheesesteak, and I spent a year in Philadelphia trying to find a cheesesteak, and none of them were as good as Stefano's, to my memory. You know, I was like, wow. I was very disappointed leaving Philadelphia with the cheesesteaks that I had there, and I honestly couldn't wait to get back to Florence to have a cheesesteak. And I still eat cheesesteaks from Stefano's. I don't get to go out to eat as much as I want with my work schedule and, you know, life and finances and all that. But I do love Stefano's cheesesteak. And we talked about cheesesteaks at Buxton Hall, and 100% inspired by Stefano's.
Nice. Well, that's definitely something on my short list too. So for us, it's actually Chibo's because of the side of town we're on. So I find myself over there a lot more frequently than Stefano's, just because Chibo's is right there. It's right around the corner from my house. But sister restaurant, and they've got the cheesesteak too with the marinara. It's a little bit different. And yeah, that's definitely on my list. Popular item, good answers.
Yeah.
So what we're planning on doing is getting a showcase together like we've done with other restaurants. The last one we did was F.E. Pops with Tommy Bolger. Get out to Elliott's, get some shots in the smoker and all that. So just be looking for that. Thinking maybe May, that will probably be out. But in the meantime, dude, I'm super excited. And now that we've shared some of the stories, see, you didn't know some of the background of the story either. There was a whole thing behind all this.
That's amazing.
And so hopefully you found that interesting.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I'm really excited would be an understatement. And just in general,
Well,
where
thank you.
the direction that we're going, but certainly about Elliot's being out there on Lucas Street, out there on 52, and everything that's happening with you guys. And so we'll dive a little bit more into that here soon. Y'all make sure that y'all stay tuned for that. That should be a really good one. But in the meantime, Elliot, I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, man. Great to hang out with you. And, thanks again for having a hand in bringing me to Florence. And I'm super happy to be here and can't wait to get to the beach and just spend more time in the area. And
Yeah,
I've been, super excited to meet the locals and the regulars that seminar already had and continuing to make some more new friends in the area. So come and see us down at Lucas Street.
Absolutely. And let me be on the list of people to tell you welcome home. And we're glad
thanks.
to have you here, man. Super excited about it.
Thank you so much.
Well, also, we're always super excited about y'all's viewership and listenership and all the support to the Florence Foodies platform and this podcast and everything else that we've been doing. We love the community of Florence. We appreciate you as always. And God willing, we'll see you on the next one.